For more now, we are joined from Washington by CBS News Military Analyst Colonel Jeff McCausland. Thanks for being with us, Colonel.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
You know, there seems to be a disconnect with what is going on with this mission. On one hand, the allies say Gaddafi must go. But on the other hand, we keep hearing that this is a humanitarian mission meant to protect civilians. So, that being said, how far can the allies go in terms of removing Gaddafi?
Well, you know, you're exactly right. You know, and President Obama and Mrs. Clinton said prior to the UN Security Council resolution that our goal was the removal of Gaddafi, and he reiterated that today as a U.S. goal. That being said, the Security Council resolution 1973 calls for all necessary means to protect civilians and civilian-populated areas under attack. It doesn't call for regime change. So this group of countries that have come together to put in the no-fly zone and confront Gaddafi have got to do so within that particular resolution. And that means only that, a no-fly zone to protect those civilians that are under attack.
Yeah, that's one aspect of it, but here's another. U.S. leaders have said that they are going to hand over control of this operation, but we still are not sure which country will take the reins. So could all of this indecision play into Gaddafi's hands somehow?
Well, you know, it certainly might, and there's a real desire on the part of the Obama administration to see a multilateral group take control of this mission. At the very onset, the president said, we're here for days and not weeks at the front end of this mission, bringing, if you will, those special capabilities the United States has. There seems to be a couple alternatives. One would be NATO takes control, but that doesn't seem to satisfy the French, and it certainly doesn't seem to satisfy the Turks. NATO has to operate under consensus. All 28 countries have to agree. In addition to that, of course, we are all very interested to see Arab participation. The Arab League, the Gulf Cooperation Council, called for the no-fly zone, and the Arabs don't seem to like the idea of operating under a NATO flag. The British and the French supposedly now are working on some kind of language that bridges this right now, but at the moment it appears, at least, that the United States certainly is in control, and it's still unclear who we're going to hand that over to as we make that transition.
I want to get back to something that you just said. The president said that we are in this for days, not weeks. As history proves, it is fairly easy for the U.S. to engage into a military conflict, but it's very difficult for it to get out of it. So what are you seeing here?
Well, that's very true. You know, wars are easy to start, and they're oftentimes very difficult to end. And this one here, it's a little unclear how this is going to come out. You know, the no-fly zone is not an end state. It is a means to an end. And what is the end state? Is the end state, again, as we talked a moment ago, Gaddafi's departure? Is it a negotiated settlement between Gaddafi and the insurgents, which I think, after all the blood that's been spilled, is pretty unlikely? Is it the creation of a rump state, so-called Eastern Libya or Benghazi? What is that particular end state? And obviously this could go on for a long period of time. Should we reach a point where there's a stalemate on the ground? We have prevented Gaddafi from destroying the insurgents, but obviously we don't want to be the rebel Air Force and support them in their defeat of Gaddafi on the ground.
Colonel, I want to tap into your personal experience because you served on the Kosovo task force in the National Security Council in 1999. What sort of parallels are you seeing between then and now, if any?
Well, I think a couple of them. One is that, you know, at that time we bombed Kosovo and Serbia for 3 months. And at the end of the whole thing, of course, Milosevic did quit. But there seems, in retrospect, a lot of people who believe now that the reason he quit was two reasons. First was the Russians had said they were not going to support him, and there was a clear threat of a ground invasion by NATO. And after 3 months, that's what it took. The air power alone was not decisive. It was very, very important, but it wasn't, in fact, decisive. The second thing was we were just trying to get Milosevic to leave a particular part of a country, but we knew exactly what our goal was, to get him out of Kosovo. Here again, our objectives in this particular conflict are certainly not nearly as clear.
Something the American people may be asking is, can the U.S. military afford to keep up 3 simultaneous military fronts, or are we just stretching our resources too thin?
Well, we're pretty strained, there's no doubt about it. In my military career, I can't think of a time where we were busier. We still have 100,000 troops in Afghanistan, about 45,000 in Iraq. You know, we have a lot of forces involved in the humanitarian assistance in Japan. Now this operation in Libya, and it's very worrisome, I'm sure, in the Pentagon, who are now right now watching the ongoing conflicts that are in Yemen and in Bahrain in particular, which many would argue have greater interest for the United States.
Definitely a lot going on right now. All right, Colonel, we do appreciate it. CBS News military analyst Colonel Jeff McCausland, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.